Welcome to the March meeting of the Commission on Aging. Thanks to everyone for coming. We're still short a couple of members. The fact that you guys all showed up makes me so happy because we have a quorum. And I call publicly on the Democratic and Republican town committees to please help us out by giving us new members. And we will also look.
Working on it.
Working on it, awesome.
I'm working on it.
Woohoo!
And-
We
yeah.
love it.
Good.
Okay, so
In
let's,
fact, I have a Democrat possibility for you.
Okay.
woohoo, even better. You guys rock. Thank you so much.
Hurry up.
I love it.
By the way, because I'm on the nominating committee, any of these, if they have anybody, they should bring them to my attention. I will interview them, and then at the next meeting, which is a month from now, we will present them, and it's usually an automatic.
Okay, that's awesome, and then they gotta get approved by the selectmen as well, so plan on being here for the April meeting as well, because we will not likely have our new members in place by April. It takes time, so let's shoot for May for new members, that would be awesome, would be fantastic. Awesome, so because we missed out a quorum on last month's meeting, we have two sets of minutes to approve. So first question is, does anybody have any questions or changes to the January minutes of the Commission on Aging? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve? Thank you, Jerry. Second, thank you. All in favor? Aye, great. Now moving to the February minutes, does anybody have any questions or changes to the February minutes? Yes,
There's
sir.
one change under new business. It should be, when you talk about the new cafe at the Darien Library, it's not Ableist, it's Abilis, so it's Abilis, so that's the only correction in the minutes.
Good. Cool. Thank you. Any other suggested modifications? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the February minutes as modified? Thank you. And second, thanks. All in favor? Appreciate that. Thanks, everybody. And we'll now open our March meeting, moving on to Beth for our report on what's going on at the Mather Center.
I'm gonna talk more about April than March,
Okay.
but just our last drive-through lunch, that's a big drive-through lunch, will be on Thursday, St. Patrick's Day. We have over 80 people coming for lunch that day, drive-through. We're gonna come into the building after 2 years, April 1st.
Wow.
Which is a Friday, it's April Fool's Day. We decided that we're gonna make it a very happy event. I've got some crazy decorations and stuff, and we're gonna do an open mic, which means I have people that are gonna come up and be telling jokes, and, as well as myself, just because I think we need to start off with a lot of laughter, because this is just an incredible, for us, an incredible milestone. It's the last piece to bring in. We're still doing very, very well we're doing exactly still what Town Hall's doing. If you're boosted, you have an option of not wearing your mask. If you're not, you need to continue to wear a mask in the building, in center, especially when it's bigger groups together. The participation in programming continues to escalate. We continue to add new programming, though we're still doing some virtual programs as well. But it looks like people are feeling more and more comfortable, because that's one of the things as well. I've talked to the other senior centers, and people aren't seeing some of their regulars back again because there's still apprehension. And so we have to be gentle and go easy and just keep offering things and making people feel as safe as they possibly can be. The only thing that we're keeping in place still is the distancing and the room, the attendance limitation. So we're still not fully pushing people together. When we open the lunch program, it will be for folks that are eating Chef Judy's lunch only. We're going to do 4 to 5 people at a table so that we have some distancing. No more lines, it's gonna be all by service. We have tray systems with domes on them with pre-filled, the utensils have these little napkins that are like sleeping bags that they're all gonna go into for as little touch as possible. We'll continue with that now from now in perpetuity. So we're gonna be looking for volunteers to help us with the lunch program as the lunch program expands. And then eventually, folks, I don't know if people knew, people would sometimes bring their own lunches in, and we're always invited to, because the point of our lunch program is for people to socialize and meet with each other. That will happen again once we get a little bit more of a handle on this separation thing and people start to feel more and more comfortable. We are going to be able to ask if you're boosted to come into the lunch program. So we're going to be able to, I've spoken to David in public health, we have that as a requirement. So right now, also people that come into the lunch program have to be fully vaccinated and boosted, so we're allowed to ask.
Is that only an oral request, or do you have to see the actual card?
We can
Yeah.
ask to see the card, and I
Okay.
think we will, and once we see the card, we don't need to see it again, and we'll keep tracked. We have right now, I think I should have given you an exact number, but the last I counted, we have 457 waivers in our book. That's 457 people that have been coming into the center and participating, that we're not making them sign another waiver, but in order to be into the building and participate in the programs that we've had, they've had to do that. Nobody's giving, everybody's so cooperative and pleasant, it's not funny. So we're just gonna ease into it, and the thing that we're gonna do with coffee too, is our coffee is a kind of a self-serve thing. We're gonna have wrapped snacks rather than anything that you can cut or anybody can share. They're gonna have to use wrapped snacks. And we're looking at throwing away, having disposable cups and things like that for a little while, till we go back to the actual way that we used to do it, which is just come on and grab a cup and sit down. So just a little bit of a restriction, not terrible, but we're just trying to ease it. Again, because our population is all pretty much over 65, so we're just trying to be a little bit judicious just for a little bit longer. And hopefully we don't have to go back. I was thinking about 2 years outside, 2 winters outside. You can't imagine what it's like to do that lunch program in all sorts of weather, and how we went from, thanks to Darien Foundation and Corbin Cares, and the restaurants actually helped teach us to do that, but we went from having like 197 different people coming through that way to close to 300 different people coming through that way. So folks have really learned about the center too, because they get a newsletter every month, the whole 9 yards. So it's been an advocate for us in a lot of ways too, and a little bit of an ambassador. So, you always have to look on the bright side. So that was a gift that was given, but I will be very happy to be back in. We can't do both because as we get busier, there is the idea of running folks over as they go in and out of the building. So the safety is a big concern, and also there isn't staff to be able to manage both programs. But the chef is gonna have to acclimate to coming, to having service inside, and it's gonna be a little cumbersome in the beginning, because it's just a new routine that we're doing. So we're hoping to get busier again in the afternoon as we open up more and more. So Ray, you're gonna be back on the desk again soon. Most of the morning volunteers have come back, so that's really been very, very helpful. I don't know what we would do without our volunteers. So if anybody's interested and they wanna know about volunteer positions, that's another thing, please call either Stacy or I. It doesn't necessarily mean for the lunch program. If somebody wants to run a group or, have a special talent or something like that, and they want to share it monthly or, once a year or something like that, we're always looking for those kind of programs too. So just give us a shout. But we're very, very happy to announce this. There are some people that are very sad about the lunch line going away. But, that's gonna be also, they're being invited to come in, and they're really looking at the newsletter now to say, I'd like to hear that speaker, so I'm gonna come for lunch that day. And they also know the quality of the food, and it's been very good for Judy from the standpoint of showing a full menu and really lots of creativity and imagination. So folks really know what she's capable of, and they know the quality of the food. So I'm hoping that the food program inside gets a little bit of a boost from what it was pre-COVID. So that's my story.
Fascinating. So I'm interested in how, because we know it's airborne, right? In other words, and so I understand being extremely safe. So how are you going to slowly move towards, so for example, cut cheesecake or something of that nature? What's your thoughts on that?
The chef herself and now we're about to get another building attendant. They have food handlers. The chef has the big license, but the other 2 gentlemen have their certificates. No one, once everything's domed and covered, nobody's gonna be breathing on your food except you.
Right.
So that was one of and also when everything's wrapped, you're gonna unwrap your own stuff. Right now, the only thing we're working on is beverage. How do we, which I think we're gonna go table to table with either ice water or lemonade or tea. ourselves, and we're gonna be doing that. We used to have 8 or 9 at a table. We're not having 8 or 9 at a table. We're looking at starting with 5, but we may cut back to 4, so that there's a distance this way between you while you're eating. And, you know, we're hoping that folks use good manners and also, I think people are gonna be more aware too. So if they also want to, for instance, we had another St. Patrick's Day program last week, and there were many people, they had the bag lunch in their lap. We socially distanced each group from each other, so there were couples together, there were friends that were 3 or 4 people, but there was distance between them. And then after everybody ate, they put their trash on the floor. We did all the cleanup so that they didn't have to gather at the trash. This is how we're thinking about everything that we're doing. And everybody complies. And many people put their masks back on. They just felt like they were in a room of 50 people. They felt like they wanted to put them back on, and we don't make anybody feel uncomfortable. We just, you know, you want to put your mask back on. And actually sometimes I'll put mine on, Jerry saw, or Stacy, as we run through the room just in case people are uncomfortable with us not being masked. So we're just gonna try to do this as gentle and as comforting as we possibly can, and as good measure too. We're waiting for someone to tell us this is an endemic and no longer a pandemic, and then we don't have to stress so much. But still now, we have to, you know, go gently.
Right. Other questions for Beth? Thanks, Jerry.
I just wanted to just say something to Beth. I just think that Beth and Stacy and I know Allie, you work with the seniors and everything, and I just think that you and your staff have really done a remarkable job with our seniors. And me personally, because I talk to a lot of them, they are so grateful that we kept this going. I mean, I don't know what they would have done if they couldn't, you know. Now they're getting more happy just coming into the building. And they were people that didn't want to even come out of their houses. But everybody's pulled together, and it's just pretty awesome to see a community like this do this.
I think that's.
I mean, it warms my heart.
Jerry, that's the key, it's this community, because I know other senior center directors, and I know that they didn't have a smooth transition. I know they had to close in between because they didn't have compliance.
Yeah.
So we have to really look at our, you know, our residents and, you know, be very proud of them, how kind and compassionate they were to each other, and how cooperative, and how patient, you know, every now and then. There's always a little agita, people love to share. And, you know, we take that, but for the most part, when people were explained, even as we were going through this, when they had to still walk through the halls with the masks on, or when they got into the room and they could take them off or not take them off, people were very, very, very cooperative. So I don't think we would have gotten through this time if we weren't here. Because I know what other directors went through. Allie probably can speak to the folks she dealt with too. They cooperated with the way Allie had to provide service.
In the parking lot.
Right, right, so,
That worked.
right, so if they didn't, so we have to say that about this community, so I just wanna say that. It was-
Kudos to you. Great stuff. Other questions or comments? Hearing none, thank you, Beth. Allie, tell us about Human Services. What's going on?
Morning. So as many of you probably heard, the ARPA committee has been meeting regularly in town to propose the proposals for funds, the $6,430,414 that the town got in ARPA money. From a human services perspective, we proposed some food insecurity and mental health issues, obviously from COVID, have become very pressing and of utmost concern. So we felt that some money should be allocated to those funds. We haven't ironed out exactly how it's gonna be, but the town did propose, and it's gone to the selectmen, and I went to the Board of Finance, and I think next step is the RTM. So we proposed $250,000 in mental health resources, and what we're thinking, and this is not set in stone, is that local nonprofit mental health agencies could apply for grants, and then similar to how they do throughout every fiscal year in the Board of Selectmen's office, nonprofits can request grants. And even if it is just a temporary solution, like it's not gonna be something that's sustainable necessarily, because once the money is used, it's used, but even just to get them out of this hole, because so many of our clients who need mental health resources, the wait lists are so long. So if we could help family centers, or I'm just using them as an example because they're right here, with getting extra staff to kind of bring that wait list down. So that's where we're thinking, but we're still, nothing's ironed out quite yet. The other, then in terms of food insecurity, the proposal is for $100,000, so places like Person to Person who have helped our Darien residents throughout, those in need, throughout the pandemic. And then there's another program we do with our families called Filling in the Blanks, where our low-income families can get food. They pick it up here, actually, not in school, but for kids who are on free and reduced lunch. And then other nonprofits that have helped throughout, we're trying to think of who directly helped our residents, the ones that we know in need. And there's $100,000 potentially for that. And then for our department, we have an essential needs account, which the town gives us $11,000 a year. So we have the ability to, I have a checkbook in my office. I think it's one of the only 2 checkbooks, I believe, in the town. But people who need help with their rent, like an emergency basis. So we did request money to be put into that. So $75,000 in case, and this can be reallocated if it's not used, in case there's a surge of evictions or shut-offs since those moratoriums ended. So that's where we're at with that. Just wanted to fill you in. Otherwise, as I mentioned last time, the assessor's office, has their elderly tax deferral or tax credit programs going on. We actually reached out to everyone who participated last year. We did this a couple years ago. We sent a letter to anyone who participated, because some of them are not our clients, just letting them know of our services. So I think last time it only resulted in like 2 new clients, but even if it's 1 or 2 people, it's someone that we're able to help. And same with energy assistance, that's going to be winding down in May, and we sent a letter to all of our clients who participated in the past, just reminding them. So that usually gets us a few more people, but we just want to make sure no one misses the deadline. So that's about it.
Gina, I'll open. Any talk about crosswalks or anything else of that nature in that committee as far as the allocation of that $6 million?
Well, I don't know all the details of it, but yes, there is stuff with the public works and the infrastructure that they said. I believe that the police commission had asked. Don't quote me on what was being taped. I was like, I don't remember exact numbers or anything like that, but I know that they did mention certain crosswalks. Like I think there was one where it was St. John's and Mama Carmela's.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I think that's one of the ones that was proposed, and I forget where the other one was. Maybe it was downtown. So I believe that there is some between the police requesting it and Public Works. I don't know all the details of it, but.
Well, yeah, improving that crosswalk from St. John's to Mama Carmela's, Jerry, as you know, that 8 o'clock service weekdays.
Oh, yeah.
That, and how many people cross that walk, either
Right.
because they parked or because they're going to Mama Carmela's or wherever. That would be huge, because that 8 o'clock mass is primarily seniors, and so that would be really great to be able to improve that intersection.
And they don't stop when they make those,
No,
that,
people don't pay
left
attention.
turn.
Correct.
Scary.
On that same topic, I met with Pam Gary, presented her with the ARP Livable Communities program.
Okay.
And it's substantial, and she's looking at it. But one of the sub-aspects of it is walkable communities. And so I suggested she subscribe to the Walkable Community newsletter and become more familiar with it. Because what you're talking about is a pure Band-Aid. It's really not a fix.
Fair.
For a livable, walkable community, you need to have the traffic lights in sync, you need to have the right types of curbing, you need to have the right types of street marking, you need an awful lot of things. So putting a crosswalk in is like putting a Band-Aid on the wound. If you're really going to look at a community that's walkable, and our community will be walkable in 10 years, it's not walkable today, but look at the housing that we're developing.
Yeah.
It makes sense for us to do it. But it's gonna take a leader, it's gonna take the select woman or somebody, and some people that can bring together the various organizations, planning and zoning, building, traffic, police, safety, all of that has to mesh. So it's a big undertaking, but I certainly think it's worthwhile.
Absolutely. Other questions for Ally? Hearing none, thank you, Ally, for your report. Old business. Peter, I know we're still in the midst of the legislative session. What's going on?
We are, I've got a number of things to report. Let me start with the Darien Library. Let me read you a mid-season report that came out from AARP Tax Aid in the state. Despite a few snow days and holidays, you've processed over 2,600 clients thus far, an average of 15% more than the last two normal years of 2017 and 2018. 400 of these were done virtually. 470 were done at the Darien Library, which as of now is the largest AARP site in the state of Connecticut by a factor of almost 2.
Wow.
We've been very busy.
Yeah.
And it's going to stay open until tax filing ends. Mondays 1 to 7, Fridays and Saturdays 9 to 4, and by registration. So it's been a very effective program. And it's for anyone, any age, any income level, as long as it's not complicated. I think we turned away somebody that did day trading and came in with paper money. Okay, turning to AARP. AARP has testified in 30 hearings to date. And I just want to call attention to a couple of things. SB 195 successfully passed out of the Human Services Committee. It would increase to $50,000 the minimum of assets that may be retained by a spouse of an institutionalized Medicaid beneficiary. It would make it easier for community spouses to plan for their own future and possible LTC needs, and make it easier for them to remain in their homes as they age. When I read that, I wondered, that's community, so that's for a couple. I said, what about singles? What about single people with Medicaid? And I'll make a long story somewhat short. That's an issue that I think the legislature is going to address next year. Let me read you this paragraph from SWACA, Southwest Committee on Aging. Connecticut currently has an asset maximum of $1,600 for Medicaid accessibility for an individual. This is the lowest asset maximum in the nation. By keeping the maximum so low, we are almost asking residents to make a choice between maintaining themselves in the community or moving into a skilled nursing facility. In New York State, the asset protection level is $16,800. In Maine, it's $10,000. And many other states fall between $2,500 and $5,000. We need to have Connecticut reevaluate their asset protection limit.
Totally.
It's a no-brainer. But again, we've got to get that going, and we've got to get that on the legislative docket, and it does not appear that it's going to be done this year, but it certainly should be done next year.
What's the resistance to that? Is it funding or just,
I wish I knew, Jim.
I mean, because it's so obvious.
I know, you look at some of these and you go, these are no-brainers. Right?
To be that far apart, especially when it's the Northeast, the states you mentioned, it's just ridiculous.
I agree with you. Here's one that didn't make it out, okay? HB 5310 would require nursing home facilities to spend at least 90% of Medicaid funding provided by the state on direct care. It would also require nursing homes to provide summaries of their annual cost reports. It did not make it out of committee. And the reason it didn't, it was because of opposition from nursing home operators and some unions. But it is a fight that AARP is committed to, and they're going to go after it again next year. Another bill that's pending is establishing an ombudsman program that goes beyond the ombudsman program which we have today. Ombudsman today primarily deals with institutions, okay? And again, as more and more people age and are in their homes, the thought is to extend this ombudsman program to those people that require care living at home. And that's moving forward. I could go on and on, but I'm going to stop there because I have a couple of other things. If anybody has any questions at this point in time.
No, the only one I would mention, and the commission is not taking a position on this, is Senate Bill 88, which is again the assisted, as the opponents say, physician suicide, others say
We say euthanasia, some of us.
They're euthanasia too. So there you go. So that one is still in play. So whether you're pro or con, you still have the opportunity to have your voice heard on that.
And finally, and Joe, I'm going to raise a new business subject.
Sure.
But let me bring this one up. The statewide senior center task force work group is, and Beth can fill it in, but one of the things they're asking the legislature to pursue is a dedicated statewide senior center coordinator to be housed at the State Unit of Aging, Department of Aging and Disability Services. Do you want to talk about that at all, Pat?
It was really the whole idea of the bill and the working group getting together, that there would be somebody who would provide oversight to the 169 towns to unify what our objectives and our goals were based on the National Senior Center Institute, the National Council on Aging, and to find a way to still be respectful of the culture and the demographics, because we are very different from town to town, and the socioeconomic diversity of each town, to come into place that we would make sure that these senior centers are focal points of service. So, and there'd be lots of ways of doing that. So looking at what already exists that works and looking at where they're falling short. And right now, there's no one directly to go to who can advocate for that or has, and this is what we're working on, sort of a unified, flexible description of what each of those senior centers should be doing, and while not mandating it, which would cost money. So they sort of want things that are mandated but not needing to be funded. So they're looking at, programming, health and wellness. They're looking at accessibility, like we're very fortunate, we're on the same campus, so we make referrals to human services. Ally is the municipal agent. We have other towns, the senior center directors and municipal agent. Some towns, human services is the director and the senior center is the coordinator under human services. So we want to look at all of the things that are working in each town, not dismantle them, but enhance them and make sure that the seniors are getting the best services that they can at all levels. It's also being looked at that there is 4 decades of service, because you're with a younger senior who needs assistance with care planning, an adult, an older adult, a mother or a father. So if you come into the system, and that's where I would say that I see younger seniors more, would be 55 to 65, they're dealing with an aging parent who has multiple needs, and they're looking for resources, sometimes they're looking for support, that kind of thing. But that's supposed to be part of our mission as well. There is an Older Americans Act, which is national, and we're all supposed to be following all the precepts of the Older Americans Act. So up until this point, there's not been anyone who's actually advocated specifically for senior centers. And because of the way we're broken down into this CWC, SEO, where we're all put together in a grouping of women and children and seniors, that's a ball that's been dropped for a very, very long time. Some of the stuff that even Peter just said about the Medicaid, even about, it used to be $60,000 that the in-house spouse could keep, and the ombudsman program, I remember this when I was a young chicken. When that originally started in the 80s, there was one ombudsman that was for the community and one that was for facilities, and then had workers regionally under them. That all got chipped away, so those are things that need to be brought back as people live longer and longer and longer. So we need to get more efficient too, because we're now seeing older people that are able-bodied and able-minded that can come into the senior center but have different needs. So, is that?
You know, you've given me the perfect setup for what I want to talk about
I always
in
do.
new business. I'm gonna read you this headline.
Please.
6 state commissions, victims of budget consolidations disappear after decades-long record of achievement. And that was sent on June the 20th, 2016, announcing that the 23-year-old Commission on Aging was eliminated because of budgets. And what I'm suggesting, Joe, that we, Commission on Aging, and your brother and sister commissions on aging in 169 towns, maybe take a look at this and try to reinvigorate and put this back in place. Because what I see is, I see senior centers being buried in one place, ombudsman being buried in another place, having different responsibilities. In all of this gives a poor old consumer like me a great deal of confusion for when I need service. Who do I turn to?
But would you turn to the state
Who
though?
do I report to? No, but there should be a clear path that goes to the top. And there should be somebody at the top that's driven by their focus on seniors.
No, I agree, on an
And-
advocacy
and-
perspective, I completely agree with you.
And the percentage of seniors, as you know, is increasing. Those over 85 will go up 30% in the next 20 years. So what I'm saying is, this is something that we should look at, not just this commission, but all commissions, to see what we can do to bring this back. So
And-
that's a
and this-
piece of new business.
And to take the ball from Peter, that's the idea of the senior center working group too, is that we all of us establish ourselves as the focal point for all of that information, for entry into, into what happens for seniors, being able to give information and referral from the get-go when somebody needs something, when they're younger, for somebody older, and then it just carries on in perpetuity. Then having the senior center focal point person, or having those two ombudsmans, that would go directly to the municipal on aging, who would be the person that would make the referrals for those kinds of programming. But we'd all know about each other. We found even during COVID that, and the public health departments have reached out to senior centers, because we did a lot more than people thought what we did. They didn't even know what we did. So we're meeting with them on a regular basis at this point too, so we all get better and more efficient. But when we, to Peter's point, got unfunded and weren't specific, we're talking about 4 decades of being able to provide a service, but each town has to be up to the challenge of doing that. We're already there, but there's a lot of towns that aren't. So this working group is trying to actually help others and unify it a bit more, so that they are focal points. People will say, oh, you have a senior concern, go to the center, and the center will send you where you need to go, that kind of thing.
And I want to be very quick to say that I think Stephen Hernandez and Michael Werner have done a terrific job in what they're doing in looking at senior centers and looking at senior theft programs. But again, it's part of the CWCSEO, which is the jumble of organizations that covers so many of us.
So the question would be, how does one break out? Because they merge it all together, right? And that's going to be the challenge for commissions on aging like us, okay? How do we get the seniors represented by a proper commission on aging, a proper chair of said commission on aging on the state level? So that's where I'm kind of hard trying to figure out how we as commissions on aging, who typically do not speak to each other, to be blunt, okay, gather together to try to...
Perhaps you should.
I'm with you, but I'm also focused. I'm always about keeping my powder dry.
right? In other words, where can we be most effective, right?
But we might be more effective collectively than individually.
Correct, I don't deny that, but I also know AARP is playing a lot of that advocacy role as well. In other words, if it weren't for AARP following all this legislation and pushing this legislation, which I would argue has been for decades far more effective than the State Commission on Aging was. So that's what I want to go back to. Let's go back to where the State Commission on Aging was, let's call it 20 years ago. What were they doing, okay, in comparison to AARP? In other words, as far as legislation is concerned. And if the answer is not much, okay, then I don't want to spend powder focusing on new State Commission on Aging when I think the AARP is doing a hell of a job on that advocacy question. So my question would be, going back to Beth's point, I'd rather put my powder towards the question of senior centers statewide, if you follow me. And that, what she's talking about, seems like something that actually is not being done, and is not even by AARP, with all due respect, right? Because that's not their role. Their role is legislation more. Fair? So if I'm going to have our commission throw our backing behind something, I'd rather do something that seems far more likely to happen. And if it did happen, would be far more effective, given the fact that the State Commission on Aging wasn't doing a whole hell of a lot for seniors, to be blunt, that I saw, okay, in comparison with AARP on a legislative level. If it weren't for AARP, I'd be totally with you on this question. But AARP is so effective, and you're proof of it, on the legislative session, right, that if in fact we refocus on seniors. Now, I'm only one member of this commission, so you guys tell me different, okay? But at the end of the day, if I've got certain powder that I can keep dry to work towards something on the state level, it would seem to be much more effective on the senior center part, just because of what I'm going to get at the end of the day, which is real services to real seniors. Now, people in Darien are very lucky, because we have the best senior center in the state. But at the end of the day, we shouldn't be just about Darien. We should be about regional. We should be about state to be able to effectively advocate. So I'll stop talking. I've talked enough. But that's you can see the push and pull.
Yeah. And again, Joe, once we have our full commission, I really think we should take a serious look at this and talk about
Fair.
it.
Very fair.
AARP only represents 600,000 of us in the state, and there's, 3.2 million?
Right.
So, I mean, not every senior is an AARP member either. And
fair.
yes, they are fighting a lot of fights, but they will fight fights for people that want to advocate in a sensible way and with some muscle.
Yeah.
So again, I come back to, imagine if 169 commissions on aging said, we need, at the state level, this type of a person. It would carry a lot more weight, and it would give AARP a lot more muscle to try to make it happen. And I say to try to make it happen. In this politicized world, everything is more difficult.
Right. Fair.
I don't mean to be cynical, but at the end of the day, you're expecting the same people who did exactly that, defunded,
Yeah.
cut budgets, and did it because typically they're short-sighted. They're not going to take a long-term view, and they can do something today and reverse it tomorrow. And I'm totally with what you're saying, Joe. There's got to be a balance there. My concern always is advocacy tends to morph into rules and regulation. And back to what our role is. Yes, there's a wider role that the commission can play, but at the end of the day, our boat shouldn't have to go lower because we're trying to be inclusive for people who don't have the same either abilities to provide services or even interest in providing services. I just think, you have to realize who you're dealing with. And the other problem is, if we can't get obvious legislation out like those two, what makes us think this will not be high on anybody's list? And we can't get what are truly serious issues. Not that this isn't serious, but the fact that we have to explain to ourselves or ask ourselves, what's the purpose of this? even though it may be clear in language, it's not clear in intent, and that's my concern.
Very fair. Others?
We did have a wonderful commissioner on aging who started all these programs, Edith Prey, who's passed, and she was the dynamo, and all of these things got dismantled. We're talking about in the 80s. All of these programs that got put into place got dismantled when she was removed. So there is something to having the right person in a leadership position that can coordinate all this, because I believe, what you're saying is absolutely the truth. Depending on resources, depending on political will in each area. So I think that we're trying to get back some of what we lost, because historically we have lost a lot without her being a presence when they divided the whole, because she was the dynamo. I mean, I remember this. So I think that there's something to be said to the right leader in the right place, but I think we also have to start to vet this in a way that we are taking really seriously those underserved that have no voice. Because to a certain extent, we have something now we never had before, which is assisted livings. And assisted livings have done a lot of damage to nursing facilities and long-term care. Huge amount of damage to the quality of the care, to the accessibility of care. We have a moratorium on nursing home beds since 1990. They're not allowed to be built, and that's why assisted livings are thriving. And again, if you're a wealthy person, or you've done all the right things and you end up, clocking out and go to heaven at the right time before you lose all your resources, assisted livings are awesome. But if you're somebody who has a prolonged illness and has need, and especially like a cognitive issue, that kind of thing, they don't work for those people, and that's a lot of people in the state. So I think we need to have these discussions. I think these discussions are awesome to have. I think the idea that even what we're talking about with the of bringing back an ombudsman that's a community ombudsman, looking at what we're doing with senior centers, it's a time for a new discussion. And I think we will bring some of these things back again. I can get into a whole zone about the Medicaid, why it's $1,600, and because I know a lot from the previous job that I had, and why it hasn't changed here in the state. So the time is ripe for conversation. This is great. I'm happy that we're doing this, and it can't be just ARP. We have to look at our residents too. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
And so the question's going to be, where do you put your energy? Fair? In other words, is it going to be, and so not for today, but the question's going to be, do we advocate for what Beth's talking about vis-a-vis senior centers? Do we advocate for the State Commission on Aging? Do we advocate for particular bills that you brought to our attention, such as the one, the great one involving videos in nursing homes? Because I want to think through those kinds of questions to make sure that we are in fact pushing something we can actually be successful at. So, and the other factor is local versus state, right? Because what you brought to us about a walkable community, to my mind, would be, at least for the town of Darien, far more important than whatever we get out of the State Commission on Aging. And I know you say, well, why can't we do it all? Well, we're busy people, so we can't do it all. So the question's going to be, so I want to think for the April meeting, and think seriously about this. So this is a question of focus, okay? From our perspective as the Commission on Aging, should we be throwing everything we've got behind walkable communities, for example, which is a local issue? Should we be splitting our opinions between State Commission on Aging, Beth's idea related to senior centers, and walkable communities? Where can we be the most effective as this commission? Because from what you're telling me about walkable communities, it's going to take a serious push by somebody to be able to be in a position to move our selectmen, our Board of Finance, planning and zoning. We're going to have somebody, if it's not us, it's going to be somebody.
It's going to take a champion.
Yeah.
It's going to take a champion, as it did, for example, in Greenwich. It's going to take a champion. It's going to take somebody that's in a position of authority, somebody that has a credible voice in the community, and spend time doing it. but it can be done. And that's again, why a commission on aging? If you had a leader on a commission on aging, they could start to tackle some of these barriers here.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they're gonna be successful, I mean, because today we're so polarized politically, I think it's pretty hard to get anything done.
Well, we have an example though, the shuffle. Or in other words, Dave Campbell was the leader for that. I mean, at the end of the day, we spent decades around this table, and I've been here since '92, okay, talking about how the hell do we get a new senior center, right? It was only Dave Campbell who came up with the idea of the shuffle that we got behind, and it cost some of us severely politically. But at the end of the day, the reality is that it worked, but it did take a champion. And so that's gonna be the question for walkable communities. If we do get behind this, like we did the shuffle, we need to be working with a champion within the selectmen, within the Board of Finance, within planning and zoning. And so what I wanna think about is for April, is that what we wanna throw our stuff behind? Because if we do that, that's gonna be a serious push, right? You think?
Well, I've heard somebody say you can chew gum and walk at the same time.
Yeah, but you're retired. Some of us aren't retired, and
Well,
you can do that. But I'm also,
I work
with all
for
due
this-
respect to the State Commission on Aging,
I worked for 51 years, Joe, so I also knew what work busy was.
I'm with you, but I'm telling you right now that this commission has been most effective when we have picked a topic and have thrown everything we have at it. Okay? And whether it was cell phones, people don't realize. One of the things this commission did was get behind banning cell phones in cars. That goes back a while. Then it goes to the shuffle. Where we've been most successful is where we've thrown all of our weight behind one issue. It's not been where we spread ourselves thin. So when we spread ourselves thin, we bang our heads against walls in the real world. So my question would be, and so we can talk about this in April, where do you want to spend it? If you guys want to spread it out, that's fine with me too. Or do you want to focus on one thing? Whether it's the State Commission on Aging, whether it's Beth's project, whether it's walkable communities, from my perspective, if you want to do all three, okay. But we are spreading it real thin among all of us, okay? To be in a position where this commission can be an advocate, which is really all our role at this point. We don't manage a budget, okay, we used to, back in the day. But we don't manage a budget anymore. So the question is going to be, where does this commission fall? We may have different ideas politically about where we want to throw our weight behind. Fair enough? So let's prepare in April to talk about these questions, and that'll be our primary agenda item, which is, what is our focus going to be for April 2022 and beyond? Where do we want to spend our resources, especially as we get back to full strength, right?
Well,
'Cause-
yeah, that's a point I'd like to make.
Right.
Getting back to full strength, I would hope that we really look for commission members who have particular skill sets other than their ability to show up
Agreed.
for a 9 o'clock Wednesday meeting. That we, if there are people out there that can assist in making those kind of decisions, can we find people that used to be on P&Z?
Right.
Because those kind of issues, you can talk all you want about the state,
Right.
but at the end of the day, if you can't overcome, whether it's P&Z, and when I say overcome, I mean they play their role, they do what they're supposed to.
Yeah.
Finance, all of those things. We need people, and it's back to having the resources to carry out
Yeah.
something. If we want to multitask, we need the people to multitask.
I agree. And one of the challenges, some of the best people I'd love for our commission are X'd out because they're on the RTM.
Oh.
In other words, that's a huge problem for
Yeah.
us. In other words, some of our best people, Barbara Thorne, I would love to have Barbara Thorne at this table. She's on the RTM, right? So it's a real challenge for commissions on aging where you are barred from some of the best people in town because they can't serve in a dual role. So, shout out to Barbara, she's watching on TV.
Yeah, she was at lunch with us.
Oh, nice, awesome.
Yeah.
So, Peter, other issues?
That'll do it.
That'll do it? That will do it, that's good stuff. No, I love the discussion, thanks everybody for being here. Other old or new business?
I don't know if you wanted to mention, but Gina Blum has.
Yes.
Yes,
heard
good
that-
point.
Yeah, Yeah, Gina is moving on. She is going to the New Canaan organization, who has a similar role. I believe March 21st is her last day. We have beefed up the office staff for the interim until we can get a new director in there.
Fair enough.
And it's a big loss, 10 years, 10 plus years, she's done a great job. And, you know, everybody is wishing her well.
Absolutely. No, she
Will
did.
be missed.
At Home in Darien was really, under her leadership, went wild, and with all of the great volunteers, including, you know, she really was fantastic. So, all credit to her. Sorry to lose her, that's for sure. Awesome. Other old or new business?
I discovered recently, I don't know if this might come into the senior center, you were talking about immunizations and booster shots, et cetera. But I just recently came across the Department of Public Health in Connecticut has a website called CT Wiz, I think. And that is where vaccination records are kept, or could be kept if they're all uploaded. And they will actually download to you, if you apply, a QR code that you can have residing on your phone, so that if you travel, you can use it as proof of your vaccinations and boosters. And I don't know if anybody has used that before, but
I've used it, it's really easy.
yeah, it's really easy. And it just was something that everyone I've talked to, nobody knew anything about it, so. I thought
What's the website?
It's the Department of Public Health in Connecticut, but it's CT Wiz, W-I-Z, I think.
WIZ?
I think so, yeah.
And if your information, if you type your name in and it's not found, you can scan over your vaccine card, and then they will upload it. And it actually happened, I did it with them one day, and it's good if you're doing international travel, stuff,
Right,
since
right.
they still have all those
Exactly.
restrictions.
Exactly.
Plus, if, and it sounds like we're going to, seniors are going to be offered a second booster.
Yeah.
That I think it really makes the process easier if you've done it. It's not tough now, but if you just give them the scan code at the pharmacy, you'll be able to do it much, much quicker.
Right.
It's pretty user-friendly too.
Yeah.
Good tip.
And you can print it, you don't just have to have
Yeah,
it on your
well,
phone.
that's
If you don't keep things like that on your phone, you can print it off, and it's
Yeah, 'cause it-
much more secure than just your regular card.
Yeah, but it's like an airline ticket also. They can scan the paper too.
Right, right.
Good stuff. Any other old or new business? Hearing none, I have a motion to adjourn. Thank you all. Great meeting. Appreciate it.
Thank you.